200 years ago, the condition of the McLean family was not like it is today. The McLean family's land stretched far and wide, making them the rulers and lords of the southwestern area of the Grandia Kingdom. However, during the last 3 leaderships, the glory of the McLean family slowly declined, leading to the stripping of their title. Their once vast land gradually diminished. Some areas of land that were once theirs were distributed among various individuals. Eventually, the McLean family was driven out and only inhabited dry, unproductive land near the southern mountains. Logan walked along the streets towards the city center. Along the way, Logan continued to ponder over the fate of their family's economy. There were no products on their land that could serve as a staple commodity to generate income. With things as they were, even if they were to win regional wars, the McLean family would still rely on assistance from Kairos. To end this cycle, Logan needed to acquire a significant amount of money, more than the $3 million they currently possessed. There must be someone here who can provide me with that amount of money, Logan thought eagerly as he continued towards the bustling trade hub of the Grandia Kingdom, Kale. The voices of merchants offering their goods began to be heard along the city streets. Logan observed the surroundings and realized how secluded the McLean residence was. He recalled that the person he was going to meet had spent his youth in this city. According to the locals, he lived around here. The person Logan was to meet was Goldbug Philip Claude. The Ares Empire was the strongest nation on this continent. It was a centralized nation based on a system of superiority. Anyone with great talent could succeed in this empire. Regardless of age, gender, as long as they had exceptional talent and strength, they could easily achieve glory and power. This opportunity extended even to foreigners. Philip Claude was a perfect example. He was one of the wealthiest merchants driving the empire's economy and the greatest arms dealer on this continent, until he earned the title of trader to the Grandia Kingdom. However, despite being called the Goldbug, he was still willing to help people from his hometown. He used his own money and power to create miracles in the sovereign Grandia. Sometimes Logan wondered, was that Goldbug really great? From afar, Logan saw a bespectacled young man sitting dejectedly with his head bowed. The young man seemed to be lamenting his misfortune after just being deceived. Holding his head in his hands, he appeared desperate, unsure of what to do next. Logan approached the young man, who turned out to be a young Philip Claude. Logan then asked, "Are you Philip Claude?" "Yes, who are you?" Philip asked back, looking at Logan's face, trying to recognize him. Logan was grateful to have found Philip, the person he was looking for. He then asked for a moment of Philip's time to speak with him. Meanwhile, Philip still didn't recognize Logan. "Why does he know my name?" Logan sensed a strong emotion from Philip at that moment. It was the typical emotion of a businessman that he had seen many times before. The emotion of greed. Philip tried to recognize Logan from the clothes he wore. He suspected that the man in front of him was a mercenary thug. Logan began to introduce himself. However, before he could speak, Philip suddenly said angrily, "It's not the repayment date yet. The proceeds from the sale of the property will be available in 3 days. So come back then." Logan understood and simply smiled a little. Philip had apparently mistaken him for a debt collector. Philip wasn't finished talking yet. He shouted loudly for Logan to leave him alone. Logan remained silent, watching Philip in his frustration. "Please leave now," Philip said pleadingly. Logan then began to explain that he was not a debt collector but someone who wanted to invest in him. Philip was surprised to hear Logan's intention to meet him. He couldn't believe why Logan would want to invest in him. Philip looked at Logan's face. "So you're not here to collect debts?" Philip muttered to himself. He couldn't understand why someone would want to invest in him when he had just failed in his business. However, Philip tried to believe in Logan's sincerity. "How much do you want to invest in me?" Philip asked Logan. "How much do you need?" Logan replied, as if challenging Philip's words. Logan then continued that he would provide financial assistance until Philip could repay his debts and rise again. Philip was shocked, as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. He didn't expect someone to be willing to help him in his difficulties. Philip still scrutinized Logan and tried to figure out who Logan was and where he came from. There was a lot of land on his clothes. Did he come from a distant place? Philip wondered silently. However, Philip still seemed skeptical of Logan's words about investing in him. Logan then asked, "How much do you need? I'll try to help you." Philip laughed at Logan's words. "You scoundrel. If you're trying to deceive me like other scoundrels, you should be better prepared," Philip said, laughing cynically. However, when he saw the emblem on the armor worn by Logan, he remembered something. Wasn't that the emblem of the McLean barony in the Southwest? Philip recognized the emblem as belonging to the McLean family, famously poor. They couldn't even pay their own debts. So why would they want to help him? Philip grew angry with Logan, feeling played. He said Logan had chosen the wrong person to deceive. Logan looked at the infuriated Philip. He praised Philip for still being able to remain rational even at his lowest point. Logan was puzzled about how to calm down the chaotic Philip. He had an idea. "Lord Philip, please look here," Logan tried to persuade Philip. However, Philip seemed reluctant to speak with him. Logan displayed his force in his hand to Philip. Seeing this, Philip was surprised. He couldn't believe what he saw. Philip thought, how could such a young person be awakened? Would a genius like that want to deceive him? It was unlikely that a foolish person would mess up his bright future like that. Philip smiled. He apologized to Logan for being impolite to him. Then he asked Logan to explain again why he wanted to meet him. Logan said he wanted to recruit Philip permanently and pay off Philip's debts. "Why would you want to recruit me permanently? Doesn't the McLean family have any money?" Philip asked Logan. Logan dropped his bag. He then asked Philip how much debt he currently had. 250,000 gold, Philip answered. Logan said, "I will pay off your debts and buy you for 300 gold. So I will give you 550,000 gold. Logan showed Philip the money he would give him. Philip, seeing that much money, was shocked and stared at the pile of gold without blinking. Philip couldn't believe it. Was the person in front of him his guardian angel? Finally, Philip accepted Logan's offer, and they made a deal. A magician who witnessed the agreement explained that Philip was now Logan's subordinate and must not defy Logan, who was his boss. If Philip disregarded it, he would feel excruciating pain as if his soul were being torn apart. If Philip didn't like the consequences, he had to awaken his force and become the highest-ranking knight. Alternatively, he could pay 100 times the amount to a four-circle mage to lift the curse. Then the two of them left the magician. Philip felt unlucky to have to make that deal. Logan wrote the costly magical agreement just to make him a subordinate. Logan said he couldn't fully trust Philip yet because they had just met. Therefore, he needed a reasonable guarantee for his significant investment. Logan would only cancel the contract when he trusted Philip. Philip had no choice but to accept the deal. "So what do I have to do?" Philip asked Logan. First, Logan asked Philip to buy monster meat. Philip laughed at Logan's unreasonable request. Logan understood why Philip was surprised by his request. Monster blood and meat were highly toxic, so it made more sense to burn them instead of storing them. However, in a few years, the situation would drastically change. Because someone who could make a potion to neutralize monster blood with common ingredients would be something great. And in some areas experiencing food shortages, monster meat would be needed. Additionally, during winter, the disabled would be cured by eating monsters when they started to appear. Even people with erectile dysfunction could be cured with monster meat. And a year later, the kingdom's mage tower would approve that treatment. At that time, monsters would become difficult to find after news of the miraculous effects of monster meat for virility spread. With a large stock of monster meat, Logan thought he could make a lot of money. Meanwhile, Philip walked behind Logan. He still pondered his fate as Logan's subordinate. Should I just run away? Philip looked very surprised to hear Logan's explanation that he would provide 1 million gold to buy monster meat. No one would waste that much money to buy monster meat. Philip spoke a little loudly out of shock. However, Logan tried to warn him not to speak too loudly as it could be heard by people around them. Logan reasoned that he dared to buy monster meat at that price because he believed that one day the price of monster meat would be very high. Finally, Philip couldn't say anything else but agree to Logan's plan to buy monster meat. "So, what do you think the unit price of monster meat is?" Philip asked Logan. Logan replied that currently monster meat had no value. So he asked Philip to find someone willing to collect monster carcasses in exchange for 200 gold. According to Logan, That price was fair considering the kingdom's transportation costs. Philip thought with that unit price, while the funds prepared by Logan were around 1 million gold, Logan could get a lot of meat. Are you going to hire hunters to hunt monsters in this vast kingdom? Logan confirmed Philip's assumption. Is that wrong? Logan asked Philip. Philip disagreed with Logan's plan to hire monster hunters. According to him, it would be better for Logan to hire traders to collect monster meat. Wasn't monster meat currently useless and discarded? By giving a little money, Philip was sure many traders would be willing to deliver the monster meat. And that would be more profitable than hiring monster hunters just to get useless monster meat. Logan agreed with Philip's opinion. He knew that the boy indeed had good business instincts. Philip said that Logan could leave the matter of collecting monster meat to him. Besides instructing to buy monster meat, Logan asked Philip to settle in Kale for the time being. And Logan asked Philip to provide some items. Philip read the list of items needed by Logan. Logan needed bullets made from southern mountain ironwood, springs, and glue. Philip wondered why Logan needed those items. Are you planning to sell toys? Philip asked in amazement. Logan just smiled and replied that he had a better plan than that, but he wasn't ready to reveal it yet. In his previous life, Logan had seen that weapons made from those materials were highly needed in the invasion wars of the Grandia Kingdom. Therefore, he wanted to gather those items. Before leaving for this city, Logan had instructed Dwayne to recruit mercenaries. And by giving those weapons to the mercenaries, it would be enough to win the regional wars later on. However, the first thing he had to do was find craftsmen who could make those weapons and also an instructor to train using the weapons. 2 days later, the story shifted to the mercenary city, Haroon. Do you want to recruit me? A rank A mercenary, Kaiselin, spoke to Logan. At that time, Logan wanted to recruit Kaiselin to train using weapons. But apparently, Kaiselin objected to accepting that offer because he felt uncomfortable training someone. Logan still tried to persuade Kaiselin to accept his offer. However, Kaiselin still refused and suggested that Logan find someone more professional instead. Logan just smiled. He actually knew Kaiselin very well. In his previous life, Logan knew Kaiselin as someone skilled in using any weapon. He was even a great horseman. At that time, Kaiselin's name shone brightly as a great trainer. But apparently, Kaiselin's mood was currently bad. Logan thought, maybe he should persuade Kaiselin with a little money. I will pay you 4,000 gold for the job, Logan offered Kaiselin. Kaiselin was surprised to hear the price offered by Logan because usually, an A-rank mercenary like him was only paid 2,000 gold per month at most. But Logan offered twice that amount. However, it seemed that Kaiselin was not in a hurry to accept Logan's offer. Seeing Kaiselin rejecting his offer, Logan tried to raise his offer to 6,000 gold so that Kaiselin would agree to be recruited by him. Hearing that high offer certainly shocked Kaiselin. But Kaiselin still rejected Logan's offer, saying that he preferred combat missions. Logan fell silent. He felt he had no other choice but to persuade Kaiselin to work with him, and he tried to raise the offer even higher. He offered a salary of 7,000 gold per month to Kaiselin. Kaiselin was silent for a moment, but suddenly he got angry and slammed his hand on the wall. Do you think money is everything? Didn't you hear my answer? Kaiselin said loudly. What about 8,000 gold? Logan tried to persuade Kaiselin again. And finally, the mercenary Kaiselin agreed to Logan's offer to work for him. Logan then explained to Kaiselin that he was the eldest son of the Baron McLean family. Logan wondered why Kaiselin wasn't curious why Logan recruited mercenaries from other regions instead of his own. But for Kaiselin, that wasn't important. What he thought about was money. Logan just smiled at Kaiselin's reasoning. Suddenly, as they were chatting, a loud noise was heard from a slave guard who was herding the slaves. Logan observed the horde of slaves walking in front of them. Their hands and feet were shackled with iron fetters. Kaiselin explained that besides being a mercenary city, Haroon was also a slave city. Logan would see it all, because from this point forward was the slave market area. Logan understood what Kaiselin explained, and he intended to buy slaves in that market. One of the slave traders apparently noticed Logan. He thought Logan was a young man from the village and was confused. He called Logan to offer his merchandise. He said he offered slaves at the cheapest prices. But the trader was surprised to see Kaiselin near Logan. It prevented him from deceiving Logan. Logan smiled slightly. He felt lucky to have recruited Kaiselin, someone respected in that area. After walking for a while, Logan saw a shop guarded by several guards. Logan thought he had come to the right place. Logan approached someone who seemed to be the owner of the place. He said he wanted to buy a dwarf. The merchant smiled and said that Logan had come to the right place. Dwarves were a rare race in the world, so they needed special handling. Logan followed the merchant's steps to one of the rooms where there were several elves and a dwarf. The merchant explained that getting an elf was very difficult. It took special effort to obtain an elf race. The merchant tried to explain further, but Logan interrupted him and told him to bring the dwarf to him. The merchant realized that his customer came to buy a dwarf, not an elf. The merchant laughed and said that Logan's choice was very appropriate, because the dwarf they had was one of the few craftsmen ranked as an expert. An expert rank? Logan didn't understand what the merchant's explanation meant. The dwarf race was born skilled with their hands, a race capable of crafting and repairing various weapons. They were experts from a young age, and a dwarf of expert rank possessed extraordinary skills compared to others. That was the type of dwarf Logan was looking for. Logan inquired about the price of the dwarf. The merchant offered it for 200,000 gold. Hearing such a price, Logan was shocked and felt he was being deceived by the merchant. He negotiated, offering 50,000 gold. The merchant paused for a moment upon hearing Logan's offer. However, eventually, they agreed on a price of 150,000 gold. Logan then took the dwarf with him. The dwarf asked where he would be taken. Logan replied that the dwarf would be taken to McLean Land to create the items Logan desired. The dwarf simply smiled at Logan's words. Dwarves were known for their skillful use of their hands, but not for enslaved dwarves. Because even though they were craftsmen by race, without interest, they couldn't truly use their crafting skills. Logan tried to arrange a plan to encourage the dwarf with him to cultivate his interest, and he promised to return the dwarf to his homeland within the next 20 years if he worked well with him. 20 years isn't a long time for a dwarf, right? Logan asked, smiling. The dwarf looked at Logan with tearful eyes. He couldn't believe there was a master who promised to return his slave. Suddenly, in front of Logan, someone was seen running after a slave carrying a small child. Logan watched as the fleeing slave passed by him. Meanwhile, the sweating slave tried to run as hard as he could to avoid the person chasing him. The people were shocked to hear the cries of the slave guard chasing the young slave. Meanwhile, the slave continued to try to escape from his master, pushing past several people in the city center. Although the slave ran very fast, he was eventually caught by the slave guard. The slave stumbled and fell as he was kicked by the slave guard. The owner of the slave approached angrily, holding his injured left hand which was bitten by the slave. He mercilessly kicked the slave for daring to injure him. Meanwhile, the slave tried to protect his younger sibling from the kicks of the slave owner. Kaiselin suggested to Logan to ignore the situation and continue their journey. Logan understood Kaiselin's advice and intended to do so. However, his eyes suddenly caught sight of the two slaves being abused by their owner. He saw that both slaves had blue hair and red and blue eyes. They were rare slaves. Logan felt familiar with the face of the slave. He remembered someone from the past. It was Victor. Logan couldn't believe he was meeting Victor, the noble slayer. In Logan's previous life, there was a famous aura user everywhere. He used to be a slave who escaped after killing his master. Additionally, he had slain many soldiers and knights who pursued him. At that time, Victor was considered the most wanted criminal by the kingdom. And after 10 years, Victor emerged as an aura user. He proved himself that his level had surpassed that of humans. He then slaughtered his former master's entire family who had once harmed him. Since then, he targeted the nobles of Grandia and exterminated them. Victor earned the unusual nickname Noble Slayer as an aura user. The escape of the slave happened 1 year after Logan became a mercenary. So, based on that timeline, Victor should still be a slave now. Logan thought that if he saved Victor now, he would have a potential aura user by his side. However, Logan saw a rebellious spirit in Victor, and he was a relentless killer. Logan still wondered what he should do with the slave. Meanwhile, the Victor slave screamed to be released. The slave owner was angry and intended to kick the slave again. but his kick was stopped by Logan. The bald slave owner looked at Logan, who had prevented him from punishing his slave. Logan stared sharply at the owner. Meanwhile, the slave owner noticed the McLean family crest on Logan's armor. Seeing that the person in front of him was a noble, the slave owner smiled and apologized. Logan said he wanted to buy the two slaves, but the owner refused because the two slaves were expensive. Logan asked the slave owner to state their price. Each was priced at 10,000 gold. Logan looked displeased because the price offered by the slave owner was very high. Even a strong young slave would cost at most 300 gold. The slave owner smiled. Logan seemed to disagree with the exorbitant price, although he knew that for a noble slayer, the price was too low. But at the moment, the slave owner didn't know that. Logan observed the two slaves. He saw that they were still very young, and one of them was in critical condition from the abuse of his owner. The younger sibling was seen crying over his incapacitated sibling. Logan still tried to negotiate a lower price. He offered 500 gold for each slave because he felt it was a fair price. However, it seemed that the slave owner did not agree to Logan's offer. Logan stared sharply at the slave owner. "Do you think I don't know the price of a slave?" The slave owner looked nervous hearing Logan's words. He thought about selling the two slaves at a lower price because they were useless to him. Eventually, both slaves were bought by Logan and taken home. Kaiselin carried the injured Victor. He thought that the wounds suffered by the slave would not heal quickly. Logan watched Victor, who had awakened from his fainting after being beaten by his owner. Apparently, Logan secretly used force to heal Victor during the journey. His force was better than the magic of most low-level priests. However, Victor seemed to detect the force emitted by Logan. Despite Kaiselin carrying him, he did not realize it. Was this just a coincidence? Logan wondered. Suddenly, Victor jumped from Kaiselin's body. He tried to attack Logan, but his attack could easily be avoided by Logan, who quickly caught his hand. In one swift motion, Logan pulled Victor's body and grabbed his neck. Logan looked angry at Victor, who dared to attack him. He held Victor's neck tightly. His younger sibling, who witnessed his brother being choked by Logan, cried out in fear. Victor told his sister, Rhea, to escape immediately. Logan became angrier with Victor. "Do you think I look like a slave trader? If you're eager to fight, you better know who your opponent is first," Logan said sternly to Victor, who was trying to free himself. Logan reiterated that this was his final warning for Victor not to attempt to fight him. He promised to protect Victor and his sister if they behaved. But if they dared to fight, Logan would not hesitate to kill them both. Victor seemed to understand Logan's words. And finally, Logan released his grip. Logan approached the exhausted Victor. He said that Victor should not try to fight him because he would make Victor a knight. Victor was surprised to hear Logan's words. He seemed to not believe what he had just heard. Becoming a knight was an honorable noble status. Automatically, he would be released from his status as a slave. Not only him, but his sister would also receive the same treatment. Rhea, Victor's sister, looked at her brother. And with determination, Victor promised to obey every command from Logan. Logan smiled. He had expected this to happen. His sister was the key to controlling the noble slayer aspect in Victor. Logan said they would start training after arriving home, including Hamar, the dwarf. Logan asked Hamar to follow him. He intended to make a magic contract with Hamar. Hamar didn't understand what Logan was doing. Logan wrote a contract for him that after 20 years of working with Logan, Hamar would be returned to the mountains. Hamar seemed to not believe the contract that was about to be made. He was very happy. Logan smiled as he saw Hamar's joyful face. Hamar promised to make any weapon for Logan, and he was very grateful for Logan's kindness, crying tears of joy. Logan smiled because he felt that part of his plan had succeeded. He had everything he needed to execute his plan for the upcoming regional war. However, unbeknownst to him, rumors about Logan's strange behavior had spread widely to the McLean family residence. This caused Logan's reputation to plummet to its lowest point. Logan didn't know it, but the rumors put Rick in trouble.